This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025. We tell you what you need to know, follow up the context of those stories, and help each other understand.
Today, Dr. Niki is back telling us about night vision contact lenses. And of course, it's keynote season. Epic kicks off the week of big gaming news with Unreal Fest 2025.
I'm Jason Howell.
I am Tom Merritt.
Yes, you are. Let's start with what you need to know with a big story.
Thanks for the validation.
I just figured you needed to.
No, I really did.
Be confirmed.
I appreciate that.
You are who you say you are.
Father Jason.
It's a huge week for gaming, as Tom alluded to, but we've got a lot going on this week, and so you're going to hear a lot of gaming news through till Friday. We got Switch 2 launching on Thursday, Summer Games Fest, and which includes an Xbox showcase that's kicking off on Friday. We got Sony's State of Play Wednesday, but today it's all about Epic Games, who took the spotlight with its State of Unreal keynote that was actually streamed live on YouTube. So if you're following the game pubs, you saw something about this. No question, there's a lot to check out. Epic showcased a show-stealing, by many people's accounts, Witcher 4 tech demo. It's running on Unreal Engine 5.6, and it highlighted the engine's ability to, among many things, render very dense open worlds, all at 60 frames per second on a PlayStation 5. It's using fast geometry streaming. It's using nanite foliage, which is really impressive. It makes for those ultra-realistic environments. And then another tool that's been getting a lot of news is MetaHuman 5.6, an upgrade to MetaHuman, now fully integrated into Unreal Engine. So that's kind of opening things up. It can craft highly realistic digital faces, also now bodies, and it has improved fidelity, real-time animation that you can actually use just a webcam to do the animation, which is pretty impressive, plus expanded compatibility with other engines and tools. So things are opening up. Back to the nanite foliage, which, I'm not like hardcore gamer anymore. I like to always say that when we talk about gaming stories like this, just to like set the scene. But I appreciate this stuff because I used to be, and seeing where games are at, especially with that nanite foliage kind of technology, seeing this scene in Witcher 4 where it's coming from the top down, almost like a globe view down into the dense woods, and just all of the rendering that's happening out there and how they're doing it with that feature is just incredibly impressive looking.
I went on an entire journey watching this demo where I was first, like you, impressed, and I'm still impressed. I don't want to undermine that. The foliage, the Verge was going on about the horses because the horses look amazing, and the metahumans. There's a couple of those in that sizzle reel where you're like, whoop, that just looks like a person. However, I feel like they are getting so close to looking like a person that I'm getting more critical of the fact that they don't, right? It used to be like, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. There's motion and expression in the face. Now, I think it's two things. One, it's so close to being photorealistic that I'm like, can't you just get there? Can't you make it not be a little herky-jerky? And with VO3 and Sora out there, I'm like, those can make realistic looking humans that don't look like video games at all. Like, at what point do these merge and you don't, this kind of engine advancement is not the impressive thing because a large language model or a multimodal model can just do it.
Yeah, I think that's a real interesting thing that you put your finger on, and I'm sure you probably upset at least a couple of hardcore gamers that are like, never AI over this stuff.
No, absolutely. I understand that reaction, and it's going to happen, but some game maker is going to go like, yeah, but doesn't it look good?
And I think that's kind of where I come from with this tool, with this kind of potential integration. Like, you have to imagine these tools that approach this from very different directions, but have different kind of results, are going to merge at some point. And once that happens, once once the AI tool set just becomes an integral part of the tools that real human hardcore developers, that are behind these other tools that Epic has announced, once that's all integrated and sandwiched together, I have a feeling we're probably going to witness a moment where you do start to get to that point where these things don't have those tells. And maybe we're also becoming a little more critical because in the last 2 years, we've seen video AI go from something that was like ridiculous to something that's really pretty impressive, though it has its own tells. And its tells are making people hypercritical of what they see. And how does that translate into then what they see in video game advancements and the video and kind of the advancements that they're making with these graphics? We're very critical, I think, at this point, because we're used to being critical at what we look at.
Yeah. And I would hasten to add that I understand that you can't take VO3 or Sora or anything like it and use it the way Unreal Engine is at this point. There's too much compute required. There's just not the control in real time that you need. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say like, well, why didn't they just use VO3? Right. And I'll repeat, the Unreal Engine 5.6 demo is incredibly impressive. It was interesting to me, my own innate reaction, where I'm like, this doesn't blow me away the way it used to. Right. It's more of a technical appreciation than I'm stunned that I'm looking at something that looks this good.
Yeah, no, I'm happy that you brought it up because I had kind of the same reaction where there were some parts where I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And somewhere I'm like, why are we still at the point to where there are those tells? And meanwhile, if you showed that demo to us 10 years ago,
oh my God,
we would have been out of our minds, right? And now it's kind of crazy, how critical we are nowadays. That we're like, well, can't it be a little better? Will there ever be a time where it's better enough?
And I stop myself from being like that because I'm like, no, it can't. There's lots of great reasons why it can't, and this is impressive, and this is better gameplay, and the nanite foliage is truly amazing. But it is weird to live in a world where like, but I could also do this over here. And I know it's not the same thing yet, but aren't we on that path where it would be?
I think we are. Yeah, I agree. There is more news. Epic announced major updates for editor for Fortnite. That includes a Lego brick editor, support for high-profile IPs like Squid Game, and I think Avatar was in there, and Star Wars, of course. The Darth Vader AI-powered conversational NPC was making the news, and an AI developer assistant for coding, because of course. And then some stats around the store. The Epic Games Store paid out $2.1 billion to partners. 40 million mobile installs, 70 games offered there. It's also rolling out a 0% rev share for the first $1 million in sales to entice, developers and that sort of stuff, creators, increasing to 12% along with new features, things like preloading, self-publishing for iOS and Android, direct in-app purchases, enhanced cross-platform social features. So the store... store doing well. And with all the changes happening in mobile, especially with the app stores and the platforms and devices being required to open up for alternative stores like Epic, it's just showing off more and more that Epic really, they made a good move when they challenged. It took them a long time, and now they're going to start seeing kind of the benefits of that effort.
Yeah, I mean, the downside is Web Shop getting delayed till July now. It's supposed to come out in June, but I don't doubt that it's going to come. They just probably need a little more time to put that together for folks. And I know you talked about the Darth Vader thing, but the fact that they are letting Fortnite creators create their own Darth Vaders, well, not Darth Vaders, but that kind of character, that kind of NPC, seems like we're going to have a whole barrel of fun things. Because remember, when they released the Darth Vader, everybody tried to make Darth Vader say things it shouldn't say, and they had to do a hot patch. They seem confident that this won't get out of hand, or at least not get out of hand in a way that will be utterly disastrous. Because it's definitely going to get out of hand when people are making these in all kinds of ways. Yeah. DTNS is made possible by you, the real human listener. Thank you, Jim Hart, Mike Akins, and Norm Fazekas.
Yay! Or is it
Norm Fazekas?
There's more we need to know today. Let's get to the briefs.
404 Media reports that the Ukrainian military was found in a video that they published to be using the open source Ardu pilot software, Ardu as in Arduino, to carry out a coordinated quadcopter attack that you may have seen in the regular news, destroyed a bunch of Russian bombers at Russian air bases. Software was first designed about 18 years ago by some hobbyists, as I mentioned, using Arduino hardware systems. One of their earliest demos was using a Lego Mindstorm set to make a Lego drone that had the Ardu pilot system in it. The Ukrainian attack is being called Operation Spiderweb. So if you hear it in other news, that's what we're talking about here. Sent 117 quadcopters, armed with explosives, of course, to Russian targets using the Ardu pilot software. Now, Russia jams GPS, so the autopilot wasn't so much the important part here. They had individual controllers for all of these quadcopters, but they were sending their data over cellular networks in Russia. So there was some lag, and Ardu pilot made it so that it could actually carry out its tasks even when there was lag, and the pilots were able to just set waypoints and stuff like that. Anyway, showcases how open source tools are changing warfare and typical military paradigms through the use of off-the-shelf quadcopters. While Ardu Pilot's code of conduct does say its developers will not knowingly support or facilitate the weaponization of systems using Ardu Pilot, that's not a term of service, so technically the military can do what it wants because this is open source.
Yeah, and the developers, they noticed this, right, and went right to social media, and they were like, I cannot believe what I am seeing here, that the software that we created for this very hobbyist style, purpose 18 years ago is now being used in such, highly impactful.
Walking a fine line of being stunned, but also trying not to say we would like because there's a lot of stuff on the Ardu Pilot website about using it for peaceful purposes, search and rescue, and all of that sort of thing. Yeah. At the same time, I'm sure they're blown out of there like, oh, we didn't imagine it would be able to do something this complicated. Yeah,
indeed. Yeah, interesting. Nothing has announced the upcoming release of its latest flagship smartphone, the Nothing Phone 3, in a short teaser shared on X. There's really not a whole lot to go on here, but the company shared its arrival for some time, happening in July. And this isn't the first time that we've heard that there's a new phone on the horizon. CEO Carl Pei took part in Google's The Android Show I/O edition last month to announce that the next device would be a top-tier device with, quote, premium materials. It would cost 800 British pounds sterling. If you convert that into into US dollars. I don't know what it is if you convert it into Russian dollars, but US dollars, $1,080. So we're talking like premium smartphone, definitely the first of its kind for the Nothing brand. And I just have to wonder, is this going to get more of a presence in the US? Because up until now, they've been kind of selling it direct, the support for US carriers. Although I've never encountered any issues when I've tested Nothing phones. It's not as wide and as whole as it should be if they were going to really launch a US focused phone. So I'll be curious about that.
I'm always impressed how good Nothing is at manipulating the press cycle.
Totally.
They will announce small things over the course of weeks just to have a story every day. And it just frustrates me. They're like, the Nothing Phone 3 will arrive in July. We'll tell you the actual date later. In fact,
next week.
We'll narrow it to a week next week. And then we'll narrow it to a day. And then we'll narrow it to a time.
They are very, very good. This is Carl Pei. He's got a long history of being able to manipulate the media cycle in the Android ecosystem. So he's got practice.
Yeah. 10 days from now, Google Wallet users in the U.S. Will no longer be able to use PayPal as a linked payment method inside Google Wallet. You're encouraged to add another payment method to continue paying for stuff. Google is not removing PayPal from the app in other countries, including Germany. Neither Google nor PayPal have said why this is happening, though a lot of folks point to PayPal's own app and its own upcoming tap to pay and contactless payment features as possibly causing the rift, but we don't know.
Yeah, who knows? All I know is I've never used PayPal and Google Wallet, so I guess it makes sense.
Then it doesn't matter if you haven't.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the world does revolve around me, right?
Right.
And how
I've always
things.
said, man, if Jason doesn't use this, then it doesn't matter.
It's just a proof, right, that it's unnecessary because I don't use it.
Yeah, exactly. Objective proof.
Yes. Google's Pixel 10 series is expected to arrive earlier than its previous releases. Often, most of the time it comes sometime in like the October area or month range. Now, thanks to a few key leaks, they're pointing to a Made by Google event taking place on August 13th, 2025 this year. That's pretty specific. It's a long time from now, so anything could change. But those leaks report that devices are expected, at least at this stage, to arrive for consumers 1 week later. That would be August 20th. And, what are you going to see at that point? I mean, from what we know about these devices, they look a heck of a lot like the current Pixel 9 family of devices. Obviously, they'll have an upgraded Tensor G5 chipset or upgraded chipset of some sort. They expect that to be the G5. The base Pixel 10 is supposedly gaining a telephoto camera, which makes me really happy. Pixel 4 also expected. And of course, you can expect a healthy dose of Material 3 expressive design throughout the lineup.
So expressive. This comes from a leaker named Mystery Lupin. Android Headlines had it, and The Verge had it. So this is not, you may be like, we hear these leaks all the time. When I see, a usual leaker and two outlets I trust saying like, well, we're not saying why, but we're going to pass this one along, it makes me think this has a high chance of being true.
Yeah, agreed.
Couple of Microsoft notes for you. Microsoft is responding to the EU's Digital Markets Act by rolling out some changes to Windows 10 and 11. Windows will no longer nag users to switch to Microsoft Edge as their default browser, but that's only going to happen in Europe. If you're outside Europe, you'll still get nagged. When a new browser is set to default, Windows will associate a wide range of link and file types to it, including FTP, SVG, and PDF, making it much more comprehensive. Also, users can choose to uninstall Edge and the Microsoft Store entirely if you're in the EU. Third-party web search providers can also be enabled automatically in Windows Search. Some of these changes are live now with a broad rollout in the EU taking place throughout the next month. And this one's good for everyone. Microsoft is going to require PC makers to support charging, display output, and at least 5 gigabits per second data transfer speed if you're going to have a USB-C port that's part of the Windows Hardware Compatibility Program.
Nice.
And device makers want to be part of that program because it makes it easy for them to make sure their designs work as expected with Windows. So most are going to want to follow these guidelines. Microsoft is making that a requirement because the USB standard itself does not require a port that uses the USB-C connector to offer all of the USB functionality.
That's great. USB-C, yeah. It's the excellent connector that continues to appear in more and more places, and with expanded functionality like that just makes it even more useful. So.
It doesn't happen to me often, but occasionally I'll plug a USB-C wire in and I'll be like, oh, this port doesn't support that, or this wire doesn't support that. So this goes a long way to reducing that confusion. Obviously, it's a future facing thing, so it's not going to change stuff that's in existence. And if you're wondering like, well, why doesn't USB require this? Why does Microsoft have to do it? There are legitimate times when you have a device that doesn't need to do charging, like it's a handheld device or a specialty device that should be certified as USB, but doesn't need to support that. So, which is why they don't require it. So this is a good way to do it, to say, yeah, but if you're making a PC, USB implementers forum doesn't need to be involved in that, but Microsoft does. So good on you.
Love it. Adobe has launched the beta version of its Photoshop app for Android, bringing over many core features from its desktop counterpart. So you got layers, masking, selections, blend modes. Those are all there and optimized for mobile use. AI features like generative fill, tap select, spot healing brush, object select, magic wand also made the pilgrimage. All features are available for free. That's during a beta period. That's meant, of course, to attract new users as well as test the software. And I have to imagine this whole targeting new users thing is a big priority, especially on mobile for Adobe when you're talking about, competitors that are a lot easier to use and a lot more, probably more popular with younger users like Canva and others like it. Very easy to use, very high quality. Photoshop, has been around forever. And so it can be, as all Adobe tools kind of in one way or another can be, overly complex by comparison. And so they need to open things up and get more new users.
Yeah, they're a little behind the game in this one.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to catch up.
Yeah.
WA Beta Info does an amazing job finding hints of future WhatsApp features in beta code. They just found some hidden screens in the beta app of WhatsApp for iOS that show how to create a unique WhatsApp username and indicate the name would need to be between 3 and 30 characters long, can't end in a period, can't have 2 periods in a row, and can't begin with www or end with a domain name because that could be used for fraud. WhatsApp has never supported usernames, but back in October, the team said that it was planning usernames so you no longer had to share your phone number in order to be in contact with someone. So it sounds like that's coming soon.
Okay, that's handy. I like that. I'll support that. Rick Astley never gave up, even when his song was known by me anyways, because as we talked about earlier, everything revolves around me, as, quote, that random cheesy 80s song that ultimately became one of the most recognizable memes with the Rickroll. Now his viral hit has joined the 1 billion streams club on Spotify. The song, by the way, certified double platinum in the UK, 5 times platinum in the US. Music video now has 1.6 billion views on YouTube. So I was wrong. The world chose never to desert you, Rick Astley.
Oh, that's lovely. And a huge part of internet lore.
Yes.
A historic moment, and look at us avoiding the temptation to do the obvious.
We would never do that.
Those are the essentials for today.
No, Amos. No, you turn that off right now.
Hurry to the interview.
You've heard of night vision goggles. What about night vision contact lenses? I love it. Dr. Niki has the scoop.
Dr. Niki, thanks again for joining us.
Well, I'm excited to tell you about how you can see in infrared vision or something. A new paper came out this week in the journal Cell, and it's called Near Infrared Spatiotemporal Color Vision in Humans Enabled by Upconversion of Contact Lenses. We are going to translate that for you. And it was by some researchers at the University of Science and Technology of China.
Okay, but to start with, we cannot see infrared. Am I correct?
So
right?
unless you're wearing night vision goggles, like in the movies, we can't see infrared. And in those goggles, usually if they pick it up, it's like a monochrome green color. And these researchers were able to kind of infuse contact lenses with nanoparticles and make some near infrared wavelengths visible to us.
Okay, so I get that it would be easier to put on contact lenses than wear big old goggles, but how else does this work?
So I will say that, first of all, they tested this out in mice, which is awesome because that means they made mini mouse contact lenses.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
So the way they did this, and actually the hardest part was to get the nanoparticles embedded into flexible polymers to make these contacts, in this case, mini ones. And the problem with this is for contact lenses, they need to be transparent. They have to be hydrophilic. You don't want them binding with the water in your eye. And they have to be biocompatible with an eye. So once they figured out how to get these specific nanoparticles into the contact lens, the rest was sort of easier. And what these specific particles do is they collect the photons that are in the 800 to 1600 nanometer range, so near infrared. And these photons are then re-released in the 400 to 700 nanometer range, which you might have heard of, which is our visual light spectrum.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So
Gotcha.
all the colors we see are in that range.
So it just shifts them into a visible range.
Yeah, it kind of like bounces them back, basically.
Yeah.
So they tried this first in mice just to make sure they weren't, burning someone's eyes off. And all they did is they put these little mini contact lenses on the mice and they let the mice choose if they wanted to hide in a box that was dark or a box that had a bright infrared light in it. Mice can't usually see infrared.
Right.
And those mice that had the contact lenses showed a preference for the dark box because they wanted to go hide. So it worked.
I am jealous because sometimes I want to go hide. Did they make this work in humans yet?
Yeah, so it was good enough to upscale to humans. They had normal size contact lenses. And what another cool part is instead of just reflecting the infrared light back into like a monochrome green like you would have in the goggles, they split the infrared spectrum into 3 light areas. So you could have blue, green, and red in different levels. So 3 different colors from the spectrum in your eyes.
So infrared is red light on the so far down the spectrum that we can't usually see it.
Yes.
So I'm guessing what this means is they shifted it into the parts of the spectrum that would look blue, green, or red to us.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And the way they tested it, they put participants in a dark room and they just showed a really bright flickering infrared light, and the participants could see it in the dark.
And were annoyed. They're like, turn that.
They're like, please stop. The really cool part to me is that it also worked when their eyes were closed.
Oh.
So the reason this works is because infrared, if you've ever tried to stare at the sun, I guess through your like eyelids, infrared is a shorter wavelength, so it goes through the eyelid more efficiently than visible light does. So that was even more annoying, I guess, if you want to put it that way. Don't fall asleep with these contact lenses.
One more reason not to fall asleep with your contact lenses.
Yeah, so it works, but it's not 100%. Obviously.
Yeah. What are the downsides to this? How does it not work?
Yeah. So it's not like we're not, having Superman X-ray vision yet. Like I mentioned, it's really hard to get nanoparticles into the contact lenses in a good enough concentration to make them work. So in this case, it works, but because nanoparticles, the ones they used are light scattering, it created more of like a blurry image than a specific image. Okay. So it's not like amplifying it like the goggles would do. And you really could only detect this intense infrared light that was emitted by an LED panel on a very specific wavelength, not a full spectrum.
So the infrared goggles that are all green and black, those are going to have better resolution. You're going to be able to see things better with them.
Much better.
Okay.
Yeah. Another downside is these cost $200 per pair to make. Although I assume if they upscale that, it probably wouldn't be a problem in the future.
I mean, that isn't cheap, but sometimes your standard.
I would pay $200 to see infrared. Yeah. I think that would be cool.
could cost that much. So if they start to put these into production, get the price down and all that, what do they think they can use it for?
I immediately thought of military applications just because of those goggles. So I'm pretty sure that's one of the directions they're going to go in. They also try to apply this to glasses. It helps a little bit with the light scattering and it's a little bit less blurry, but they still need to develop this. And there's also been some criticism, like these lenses, they have no point. They're not like goggles are better. But I would argue that it's pretty cool. And like if they work on it more, we might see some really interesting developments from it. One of the examples that they think for the future is that people could wear these and detect anti-counterfeit marks on bills. I thought that was pretty awesome. Also, potentially for doctors doing surgery where certain areas are marked with fluorescence. So right now, you use like special goggles to look at that, but you could like mark cancer cells or nerves with fluorescence. And then another idea is that it could be somehow adapted to help people who are colorblind. So lots of really interesting applications.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's very good. A while ago, we talked about the sort of manipulating things so that you could see a color that didn't exist in nature. I can't remember the name of it now. But would this let you see it?
Yeah, so that color was Olo. I actually don't think that's how it's pronounced, but I'm going to call it Olo. It's Ulu, actually.
Ulu?
You can't see Ulu with these contact lenses, but I think these researchers need to pair up and give us contact lenses where you could see a color that's never been seen before. And I would pay $200 for that.
and infrared it's not X-ray, obviously, because it's not X-rays, but infrared lets you see things that sometimes are behind other things, not rock or whatever, but anything where a heat signature can get through, you could be able to see it. So,
and certain things will emit in infrared. Like we're not at the strength yet where you could see heat signatures like a snake can, but who says that we're not going to be there in the next 10 years? I think this has a lot of future potential that the haters are hating a little too hard on this one.
Well, that's how it always happens with science. Like it starts with the thing, like being able to do the thing at all. And then you start making it practical and refining it and better.
Yeah. Put your stocks in infrared contact lenses.
This is not financial financial advice. This
Absolutely
is
not. Don't listen to me.
metaphorical stock. But yeah, thank you, Dr. Niki, for bringing this to us. Where can people find more of what you do?
People can see my infrared website at NicoleAckermans.com. And I just did a tech thing where I made my Blue Sky handle my domain name. So it's also NicoleAckermans.com, because Daily Tech News Show. We do tech things here.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dr. Niki. You can join the conversation in our Discord, which you can link to at Patreon. Become a patron at patreon.com/DTNS.
We end every episode of DTNS with some shared wisdom, and today Andrew tells us about trying out Google's new Edge Gallery for running AI models locally on your phone.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you for sharing this. He says, I downloaded Google's Edge Gallery as soon as I heard y'all talk about it, and I've been successful at breaking it in interesting ways so far. I'm on a Pixel 8 with only 8 gigabytes of RAM. So the larger 3 gigabyte plus models tend to crash the app if given a complex query. The smallest model is really fast, but constantly gets stuck in a loop after about 10 seconds of responding. I plan to get the dev environment set up later to figure out if the loop is a code issue or a model one. Last time I cared about on-device RAM was when I felt like phones couldn't break past 2 gigabytes and my podcast app would close if I opened Maps. I'm going to be paying close attention to RAM in phones going forward because I want more capable models on device.
Yeah, RAM on phones right now is, so we're starting to see these phones with like 16 gigs of RAM and stuff. And when I was seeing those initially, I was like, who on earth
what do you need
16?
That for?
It turns out, AI will use that gladly. So I think that's a smart move.
Oh, and Andrew, very, very much appreciated sharing the interesting ways that you're breaking this. It's really cool.
Love it. Love it. I have to check out that app myself. I haven't done that yet. What are you thinking about? What are you checking out? If you got some insight into a story, you can share it with us. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. Big thanks to Dr. Niki and Andrew, of course, for contributing to today's show. And thank you for being along with us for Daily Tech News Show. This show is made possible by our patrons on patreon.com/DTNS. We'll see you next time.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.